Hello, everybody. It's 2:30 a.m. Central Time. It's a little late. It's on the 18th of May, 2023. It's Thursday morning here in the United States. I hope you are doing well. We are here to talk about seismic events. In case you don't know what you're looking at a three-dimensional representation of the planet, of course, but plotted out on the planet, we have the earthquakes from the USGS, European Geophone Potsdam, Italian agency. I can turn on a few others if we need to throughout the update to see what's going on. I do have somewhat of a significant sized earthquake to report to you, a 6.4 mid-range 6, down at 200 something kilometers deep, nearly 300 kilometers deep, 250 to 270. And these deep earthquakes tend to lead to shallower, larger earthquakes. So I'm going to open this up on the USGS map and show you where it struck. It struck on the plate boundary, which is somewhat normal to have earthquakes strike on the plate boundaries, these red lines that separate us between plates. And here, down off the Cocos plate, this is the Cocos plate here, goes over to the Caribbean, of course, and right across Guatemala is where the earthquake struck, down below this. So when we get something down below here, up above it, we tend to see shallower, larger earthquakes that can spread out and away from where the deep earthquake comes up. And in this case, it's coming up right at the boundary between the two, between the Caribbean and the Cocos, and then the Cocos goes over and connects directly to the Pacific. So this is a significant sized earthquake. I brought up Mexico, and I think after my last update, I didn't mention South America or Mexico or Central America in my last update at all. However, I got on afterwards and did a live update. I don't know if you caught it or not, but started talking about Mexico and Central America. Anyway, we didn't issue a forecast or anything, just talking about watching down here, and we'll get talking about it. Well, now here we are. We need to talk about it. So a shallower, larger earthquake than a 6.4 is potential. How much larger can we go? We've seen shallower, larger quakes up to a magnitude larger next to our deep earthquakes, and in some cases even larger, 2 magnitudes larger, but most of the deep earthquake activity results in up to 1 magnitude larger next to the deep quake. So when I say next to the deep quake, I mean along the plate boundaries next to the deep quake. So let's get back over here and take a look one more time. Plate boundary goes over to the east all the way to Puerto Rico. It goes to the north all the way up into the United States through the Gulf of California. Also goes down to the south, meets up with Colombia. And technically it goes back out to the west, over to the west. But we look for the flow to generally go around the deep earthquake and to the east. We'll get back over and take a look at the arrows on the map. Get all the other smaller earthquakes out of there. And you'll see we go right along that red line in the plate boundary I just showed you, over to the east and out to our letter X marks the spot. Really, there's 2 X's marks the spots. And then here is where we have 2 volcanoes that are also active. That was Santa Guido volcano a few weeks ago, and then Fuego volcano keeps going over and over again right along the red line of the plate boundary through Guatemala. So recapping, new deep earthquake up from down below here at Guatemala. We watch for up to a 7.4 to result from this. Where? In between our current sets of earthquakes. Now let's look at all the small quakes. So this deep event is sandwiched nicely in between this 5 that struck up in Mexico and this 4 which struck down in Nicaragua. So in between the 2, where does that put us? Well, it puts us right down next to where the deep earthquake already just happened. So in other words, we watch here for the potential of up to a 7.4 in South Mexico along the plate boundary going down into Guatemala. We have to warn everybody from central Mexico all the way down to Costa Rica. That's the size area we have to warn when we're talking about a 7.4 earthquake in here, because it can be felt all the way across to the Yucatan. If it's big enough, we'll see waves, not ocean waves, but seismic waves, come up and go all the way across North America to light up all of our stations whenever we get 7.0 level activity down here to the south. Now, this is significant for me to have to issue a warning for a 7 in Mexico. It'll be the first in, I want to say it's been 6 months or more since a big earthquake like that has struck anywhere down here in Central America. Now, this is on top of the other warnings, plural. I have multiple warnings going at this point for multiple large earthquakes to strike. And to show you those warnings, I guess I could possibly take you over to my YouTube channel. And here 3 days ago, and here 7 days ago. But here in the video from 3 days ago, earthquake unrest, don't be scared, be prepared. The reason this is in the title, I don't normally put this kind of stuff in the title, it's because we're looking for large earthquake activity in 2 spots in the West Pacific, one of which includes Japan. So Japan's on watch for 7.0 level activity, and then even larger than that, we are looking for something that could go possibly up into the 8.0 level, going from the letter D here at Fiji over to Solomon Islands, which is right over here to the west. Now, again, the likelihood of all of this happening is actually fairly high. I think all 3 events are going to take place now. I think that we'll see the large earthquake over here at Central America. I think Japan will still go in the next few days. And by the end of this week, the 7 to 10 day time period, we'll be seeing the big earthquake over here. And that would, of course, if it's an 8, it depends on what size 8. If we go into the mid-range 8 level, the highest potential, it would be the largest earthquake on the planet in at least a couple years. So I hope it doesn't hit, because that would make tsunami activity and a bunch of other stuff that just, it would be a headache. We'd be on all day long. It would just be a real hassle for everybody to even have to pay attention or worry about it, let alone for the people over there who have to deal with it. Okay, now let's talk about the other activity, because we have deep earthquakes. The deep earthquakes are our main players on the planet. The deep earthquakes lead to the shallower, larger earthquakes, like I've said like 3 times already. Now, these deep earthquakes are caused by, 2 different things. Deep earthquakes are caused by a uprising wave of some kind. I don't have a name for it yet, but we call it a quake low frequency. It's a electrical frequency coming up from the core of the earth, a vibration, a very low frequency. But that excitement that comes out of the core is fed by power from the sun. The sun sends charged particles to Earth, which are captured by the magnetic fields of the Earth, basically, taken down to the core of the Earth, the core electrically. And that then comes up, it vibrates back out like a bass drum, and we get deep earthquakes hammering in on the undersides of the plates. I know it sounds crazy, but basically a vibrating bass speaker in the core of the Earth causing earthquakes up at the surface where it's rattling. Think of a trunk on a car that drives by with a bass speaker. Well, in this case, the trunk lid, well, let me get back over to this. The cracks in the trunk where the vibration comes out gets heavier vibration, where it focuses in on its way up and out of the trunk of the car that's vibrating the bass. Well, Mother Nature's doing the same thing, and here's the cracks in our trunk. Now, let's go across and go out over towards Europe, because I didn't really talk about Europe in the last update, or South America. We'll talk about that, United States as well. We can just sum this up with 4.9s going across the board, taking a step down to 4.7s once we get over to Europe or towards the Mideast. Once we get to Europe itself proper, we take a next step down to mid-range 4s and low-end 4s. So in other words, we go 5s, mid-range 4s, low-end 4s. Now look where the rings overlap. The rings all overlap on Italy, where I struck out last week. This is the oddest thing. A deep 5.1 happened below the Tyrrhenian Sea, here south of Italy, right out in the ocean just off the coast of Italy, right here. When that happened, I issued a warning, a deep 5.1, for up to a shallow 6.1 to strike in Italy on the plate boundary. And what do we see? Nothing. We are now on day 11 of a 10-day watch, or day 12 of a 10-day watch. We're 2 days beyond the 10-day watch. Nothing. No significant activity at all across Europe. Now, yes, there was a 4 up on the plate boundary right up here at France. I mean, 4s, It's not the expected activity. We're looking for 2 magnitudes larger than this 4, and we're looking for it in central Italy. It did not hit. So once we get beyond the 10-day time period, I cancel the warnings and I chalk it up as an earthquake forecast miss. But I have to ask myself, and my longtime viewers would also ask, where did the energy go? It's been absorbed into the plate boundary here. The wave has gone in and gone up to North Italy, and there we are. Why didn't it break in the middle? Well, it's still being absorbed in the middle, it looks like. That's the answer. Italy's still absorbing the energy, but it hasn't broken yet. Now, the other way we know that Italy is receiving some energy is the same time Italy started to go, we saw a new spread of activity near 4.0 range go around through, was it Ukraine? Yeah, it was Ukraine, then Poland, and then this is the leftovers on that. The 4.9 and 5 from yesterday and today. This is from yesterday, the pink, and today is the white. So we are getting 5.0 level activity going around to the north. What's going on in the middle? Hasn't broken, should break. Looks like it's a strikeout for me on time frame, but let's just say in the next 2 to 3 days, if the earthquake hits and that's the expected quake, I won't chalk it up as an earthquake forecast hit, but we're looking for it. If it doesn't show in the next 2 days, we get to day 14 and nothing's hit, I'll readdress the situation. We'll try and figure out what's going on, where in Italy in particular this is getting caught up and not breaking. Because the longer we go, the bigger it gets. It's not like, I don't think it's going to go away. You guys have been watching long enough with me to know that when the wave gets caught up in Italy, we can see big activity. The wave I'm talking about here is the wave which is dropping off 4.9s all the way along the way out to the North Pole, going around the outside edge of Europe to the east. Well, look, it's going around the outside edge to the east. It should also go up into Italy. We had our deep earthquake there. No break has taken place. When I strike out in an area like Italy, I want to figure out why. Now, speaking of striking out, striking in, or getting a hit, or whatever you want to call it, California this past week, 5.5 Northern California struck, last day of the warning. And now a bunch of new activity has spread out over to the east. We saw a new 4 strike over in western New Mexico. And I'd like to go look up this earthquake just to go see what's there, and then we'll get into the rest of the smaller earthquakes that struck up and down the west coast. We also need to talk about the fires which are still taking place up in Canada along the edge of the Craton, and show you what's at the fire locations, because a majority of the fire locations are just littered with thousands of oil wells, oil and gas wells. I couldn't believe it. I went to go look it up. I just wanted to see what was burning, and when I zoomed in on pretty much all the spots, it was oil wells after oil wells after oil wells. I mean, I'm talking a lot of them, guys. That's what's burning up there. So we're at a place called Grande Ridge Volcanic Butte, the Taylor Volcanic Field in New Mexico, mapped as Pleistocene or Pliocene flows. This is ancient. Look at this thing. Okay, this is back when this was all underwater. When was this all underwater? well, guys, pre-flood. Let's just put it. It was all underwater pre-flood. Anyway, this was all filled with water at some point, and actually it went out the backside. And out the backside, and in case you don't know, the flow that went out the backside created the Grand Canyon, which goes out over to the left. But over to the left on the west side, we also go over to the east on the east side. Whatever body of water was in here came flowing out. And there's a line of volcanoes that goes around the outside edge of this ancient ocean that used to be there. Anyway, that had to be a sight when that flowed out over through the Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon was not made by the Colorado River. The Colorado River flows through the remnants of the flow of the ancient inland ocean that flowed out that way and over to the east, both directions. You can see actually which direction it flowed, mainly to the west, and went out through the Grand Canyon and deposited the sand flows out through the Mojave and down through into what is now the Gulf of California. And the ancient inland ocean used to encompass this whole area backing up to the Colorado Rockies, going as far north as Yellowstone and as far west-northwest all the way up here, up into Washington and Oregon. Anyway, let's get out of there. Oh, am I rewriting history? Sorry about that. Let's go up into the northwest. Go take a look. So we have earthquakes coming in from the northwest. There's also something else coming in from the northwest. You want to see? Let's go over and take a quick gander at the cloud situation coming in from the north. Take a look at this. If you're a new viewer and you've never seen this before, in the past several weeks I've been showing you the developing fire situation along the edge of the plate. And I mentioned oil wells, which I will show you in a moment, but let's go look at our regional sectors. We're going to turn on the true color view. This is visible satellite throughout the day today. I'm going to turn on 200 images, and this is BC, Canada, the whole province. Here is Alberta. Here's Saskatchewan, if I could say it proper. And the U.S. border is down here to the south. We have Washington State, tip of Idaho, Montana right here, just as points of reference. And now here's our smoke starting about halfway throughout the day. And here's sunset. So this is the current day's smoke. Going down to the south, the black dots that you see on the screen after sunset are all the infrared images of the fires themselves. And it's just intense. It really is. That's a lot of smoke, and you see the low pressure system here rotating, sucking in a lot of that smoke, pushing it down to the south. Now I'm going to turn on our continental view here for the United States, and we'll just do the same thing. We'll bring it back throughout the day. Now I'm here in St. Louis, and our local news is now talking about why is it so hazy in the skies? Well, I think you can see why it's so hazy. That's smoke coming from the north, but that's a lot. That's a lot. They're telling us not to worry about any kind of air quality issues because it's so high in the atmosphere. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say, Jeeves. Now let's go back up to the north and just take another look, because you also see that coming down through the valleys, down to the south, you'll see this smoke is flowing through the lower levels and filling in the river valleys with smoke as it spreads through. See that? So it's at a low level up north for sure, and once it's coming down, it's reaching the border for sure. There's all smoke. Now we're going to finally just take one big grand view on all this, and there it is. So all of this is smoke, all of this is smoke, and it's gone up and twirled into the low pressure system, making it a smoky low. You can see the real dark nature of the, or maybe you can't. I don't know if you can or not. Maybe turn on a different view on this, maybe. That's not a good way to view it. Maybe the fire view. I don't know if there'll be a better way to view it than what I'm showing it to you now. You know, it's been glitching out a little bit lately and getting a lot of this going on. A little blinking going on there. Anyway, back to the true color view. I think that's the best way to view it. And it's just a tremendous amount of smoke. Okay. That being said, regional sector view back up to Alberta. Right here we go. And if we go into any one of these locations, which, I've taken painstaking amount of time to triangulate a position from the borders to try and find the actual fire locations. And I'll just show you what's there. So we're going to turn on our borders and labels, and we're just going to go up here along the border, and we can start anywhere in here. We can just go all the way along this greenish area here east of the border. Here's the rough border of Alberta and BC, and we'll just compare. Okay, here's the rough border of Alberta and BC. Then we come up and we go somewhat straight, don't we? So right at the point where it goes straight, we can just go east, go up a little bit and go to the east. So go up a little bit and to the east. So right in here. Now you're going to see a lot of forestry clear cut, but mixed in with the forestry clear cut, as you zoom in, you're going to start to see these little pads that are out here. And the little pads are spots where there are drill points for oil and gas. And they're all over the place. And this is a lot. Let me back it out and show you. So they're mixed in with the forestry clear cuts. And look how grainy that is. Real hard to see. But oil and gas, 100%. Oh, look at that. The town is called Little Smoky. So oil and gas out the you-know-what. I almost said something that rhymes. Oil and gas out the... And all the way along through here where our fires are breaking out, at least along through the western side. I just want to show you what's burning along with the fires. I'm not saying the oil wells are causing the fires, but I am saying this. The fires are happening along the interior edge of the craton up north. This is indisputable. You would have to just tell me it's chance. Okay? Now, if you don't know about the craton edge, again, look where the fires are, the black dots, or we can go back and look at where the smoke is coming from. We have multiple different fires breaking out, of course. But you see it, interior edge, insane. They're also doing some weather modification. I would think that would be cloud seeding to induce some rain, maybe. Just a guess. That's not just going to be regular air traffic, I guarantee that. Not all at once. If you can even see a couple of them are flying together. So, okay. Anyway, the fires on the edge of the craton. Let me show you the craton diagram if you're a new viewer. Look where it goes. The rusty brownish and purple part go right up to a fine point up into Canada, right along the BC-Alberta border. And then just east of that, on the right side, is where all of our fires are taking place. Now, this wouldn't mean anything to anybody if I hadn't talked about fires no more than a few weeks ago when I brought up the edge of the craton shifting, Yellowstone having a swarm, lines of earthquakes coming down from the north, the volcanoes starting to move, and I brought up the fires. And I said, if we see insane fires break out along the edge of the craton, remember? That was before all this happened, and it's not fire season yet. So you can't tell me it's fire season, and it is just something we have to pay attention to. I'm not saying they're directly related, but I am telling you, we've seen this happen enough that I've mentioned it now multiple times. You'd have to tell me it's chance every time, and I just sip my coffee while you think about chance every time. Chance ceases to be chance when it happens all the time. It becomes regular. Okay, so down to the south we go. We have a line of earthquakes going into Yellowstone. Is there anything changed there? No. The line of earthquakes, I mean. Now let me turn off the craton graphic. Or was it on or off? Okay, craton graphic on. Look where it goes. Down through Yellowstone directly. Literally the edge of the craton passes right through the park. And I'll just tell you, I think that the supervolcano formed there on the edge of the craton. So it's not chance that the supervolcano is on the edge of the craton, is what I'm saying. Because the other supervolcano is on the edge of the craton out west, out California-Nevada border, right where the purple part meets the green. That's where the other known supervolcano is. That's Long Valley Caldera out in California. So we got Yellowstone on the purple meeting brown part, or whatever color that is, and then we've got the other one out at the purple meeting green. Can't be chance. The supervolcanoes are forming on the edge of the deformed edge of the craton. Okay, why? Well, there's a wave flowing across the edge of the craton. A wave coming from somewhere else, from far away, all the way back around and over across the plate. The wave comes in from the northwest, and it comes down along the edge of the craton from the north. Hence, my worry about the fires next to the oil pumping operations on the edge of the craton. It's accompanied by a line of earthquakes that goes along the edge of the craton down to the south into the park itself, where now the magnitudes have actually started to go up a little bit from zeros and ones up to twos. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a tenfold increase in power, so there's more power coming in. The number of earthquakes should go up next. We should see a big swarm break out up at Yellowstone next. Now, we're not talking about the tremors that happen at Yellowstone. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of tremors that happen every day at Yellowstone, and they can even get magnitudes assigned to them, zeros and ones. these are actual earthquakes up above, so the depth is telling us that they're actual cracking in the plate. I would expect the actual cracking in the plate to take place and to see a new swarm break out at Yellowstone. Doesn't mean it's going to erupt, guys. Don't worry. Not yet. Hey, if it's going to happen, I'll be doing a fundraiser for Winnebago. I'll be growing my hair out, and I'll go up there and broadcast. I don't know if the Duchess will go with me. I'll have to put her in a capsule or something and launch her into space or something. I don't know. Her and the cats. She gets the free pass to Mars with Musk. Probably want to just stay here with me and get incinerated. It'd be hell, man. Can you imagine being stuck on the freaking... No offense, Musk, but... Can you imagine being stuck there? You can't go outside. Or if you can, you got to put on a suit. Okay, anyway. I almost just went way off track there. Okay, let's go up into Washington State and go see what's going on up there. Hey, I have no problem with the guy. I ain't got no problem with Musk. You guys, oh yeah. Now I'm moving on. I got bigger fish to fry. Speaking of bigger fish to fry, how about Mount Rainier? Rainier. You guys know about Mount Rainier? It's a stratovolcano here on the edge of Seattle. You can see it from downtown Seattle. There's no worry of it erupting now. These small earthquakes are just like the ones over at Yellowstone. While there is a stack there at the volcano, it's just a sign of the wave coming in from the northwest, the new arrival of another wave. The volcanoes start to perk up. We start to see multiple little earthquake outbreaks at the volcanoes. We also see some oddities take place. Earthquakes start to break out next to power plants and power lines and other weird facilities. I'd like to go look up this 1.3 out here. Hey, look. It's nothing to worry about. It's just an explosion, but I'd like to look it up anyways. And if there's a quarry there, we'll just move right along. But you have to look them up, even if they list them as explosions, because sometimes you're going to find stuff there that's a little odd. Like no quarry. Or is there one? Maybe we're just a little bit away. You know, triangulation could be down within a couple miles, right? So let's just go and see. Is this the quarry that they're talking about? No. That's Farmers. Wait a second. It sure seems. What's going on there? This is where you get in trouble, guys. Start looking up stuff, finding stuff. The place is called Trinidad and Quincy. Is there something here I need to know about? Is there something here I'm missing, I guess, is the question. So, what are these facilities out here that look like frack wells, but they're not? I'm just wondering, we have a retention pond of some kind there for retaining water. I wonder if we have a street level view. Of course we don't. Wow. Well, two things that are very odd out there in the middle of the foothills on the side of the middle of nowhere. I'm just wondering if we have any other similar features nearby that the farmers might be using. I'm not seeing any. Those are the only two nearby. Okay, this is what you have to do. This is called sleuthing, class. What's going on right here? Oh, great. Well, all right. Look, sometimes I have to end up talking about this stuff, and I don't like having to, go real deep into it. But very low frequency. Don't tune out on me, guys. I know it's gonna sound real complex. We're gonna use the bass speaker analogy again. So Mother Nature has this bass speaker in Earth vibrating, and this very low frequency wave is going through the plate, vibrating through the plate. Now imagine if you take another speaker up above the plate and you're vibrating your own very low frequency bass, and then you match it on frequency. So match a tone, somebody's singing, and you join in singing, and you sing the same tone that they're singing. It has a multiplier effect, right? Okay. Now, where those waves cross, that's called a scalar. The spot where they cross. It sounds complex. Where the scalar happens, there's contentious plasmatic theory that where the waves cross, a new wave is generated called a scalar wave that's not detectable by current devices used to measure electromagnetic waves. And that there's a third kind of wave that's generated out of that. That comes from Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden and scalar waves. Now, the scalar wave is just a slang term for a wave that comes out of the area where two beams cross. They're doing scalar Higgs boson experiments over at CERN where they cross the beams to collide the microwave beams. Okay, just as a point of reference. Anyway, so we get the power generation, and I've talked about this for many years, the power generation stations. So this is a hydroelectric dam that's generating power, for instance. Now, whether it's a hydroelectric dam, a nuclear power plant, a coal-fired power plant, solar, wind, if it's a lot of power being generated, very low frequency, we tend to see earthquake activity attracted to those locations. Also along the power lines themselves, when the wave is powerful. When there's a powerful wave coming in, and it's coming through the plate, up above it, it'll follow those power lines and seek out and break below them. The wave will break and come up like a crashing into the shores of an ocean, a wave realizing its potential against when it crashes, right? There's a lot of power in a wave, but when it hits something is when you realize that potential, or when you use that wave for some kind of power. Okay, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Very low frequency wave coming in, goes next to the power station. We get an explosion. Is it an explosion? Would you really call it an explosion? Maybe down in the plate. Let's recap. Line of earthquakes coming in from the northwest out of the fire zone. Line of earthquakes coming down to the volcanoes down into Washington, letting us know a new arrival of a wave is taking place now, and everything's about to take the next step up in the next few days. So in the next few days, I should be talking about swarms in Yellowstone. We should be talking about a big outbreak in the northwest, number of earthquake-wise now. And the magnitudes should also start going up from where they are now, which is 0s, 1s, and 2s. We should see 3s, 4s, and a 5 come in the next few days. Where's the 5 going to hit? 5's going to hit most likely right up here in Washington, right along the Seattle Fault. Downtown Seattle should feel this next one coming in from the northwest. I think it's going to strike in the plate. I think the plate's moving and we're not getting the full seismic info out of Canada. I think the Canadian fires may be related to the oil pumping operations, or the oil pumping operations may be flaring off because of the plate shifting, which is something else that they don't tell us about, but they certainly do. Another place where we'll see a flare-off of sudden fire outbreak should be down here where the rest of the oil wells are. I'll get to this in a second because a new swarm has broken out in Oklahoma today. Speaking of swarms breaking out, how about the spot in California? Let's go take a look. Prattville, California is the location. It got the 5.0, 5.1, 5.3, and a 5.5. Or was it? It may have just been a 5.5, a 5.1, and a 5.0. It might have been 3 quakes instead of 4. I don't know. Either way, it was a significant amount of movement. It's still going now. What's there? Lake Almanor, of course. But right next to it, the volcanoes, Mount Lassen. Swarm and 5.0 earthquake on the edge of Mount Lassen. But wait a second, we're also on the edge of our super volcano here, which I had to discover myself. We've now named it Casimiro's caldera, and it's Casimiro caldera. I can never say his name right. Kaz's caldera. And Kaz is a fellow geophysics researcher who lives in Reno, and the caldera that has been discovered around him is named after him, out of honor of his hard work that he's put in. And so when I found this, the way I found this, a line of earthquakes going around the outside edge of it first drew my eye to it. Then finding out that fires were breaking out around the outside edge of this thing over and over again started to raise my eyebrows a little bit at it. Then when I downloaded all the appropriate place marks and found out it was lined with its own volcanoes and geophysical phenomenon taking place around this, such as geyser fields and other features, that I would say that this is a giant caldera missed by the professionals. And on both sides of it, we have two-folded basins as well, which again signify that this thing is some kind of ancient old volcano. Now the earthquakes next to it is, again, what I have to bring out. We cannot ignore them. 5.5 on the edge of a supervolcano that no one knows is there. No one knows there's a supervolcano between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. Well, I mean, I know, and now you know, but are you going to go tell anybody about the supervolcano that's been found between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake? It's lined with its own volcanoes. It gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge and in the middle, and fires break out around it almost every single year. And it has 2 geothermal fields on either side of it, equally placed out. So, I mean, you'd have to, again, Steamboat Springs down to the south, and up here, the Needles at Pyramid Lake to the north. And they're about the same distance on both sides of this thing. Now, the reason I make a big deal about that is because the fires break out around this thing, too. It's not just the small earthquakes. Or should I say they're small? 5.5, enough to cause damage at your house and knock things off shelves. So normally we're talking about small earthquakes around this thing, and nobody cares. Now that you got a 5 around it, and I'm telling you fires break out around it, maybe somebody will start to care about a supervolcano being at the California-Nevada border between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. I've been talking about it for several years, but yet no professionals ever acknowledged it. Why? Well, they've acknowledged the one down to the south, which is this one that's oval-shaped, lined with volcanoes, and gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge. Maybe 2 is too many for them to have out here on the West Coast. I don't know the reason for not talking about it and hiding it, but now that we have earthquakes of significant size around it, fires which keep breaking around it, maybe somebody else needs to get on it, aside from me. Let's go on down to the south and take a look at the earthquakes that have developed along the coast. Anybody who lives in California knows about the San Andreas, and even people internationally know about the San Andreas. We know it goes along the coastline of California. Let me show it to you over here on the USGS plate boundary map. The San Andreas, I mean. There it is. Big, thick red line. It's also the plate boundary between the Pacific and North America, by the way. Anyway, there's a line of earthquakes coming out of the north, going down in a huge stack, going way up off the screen. Now, the number of earthquakes here is pretty significant north of the Bay Area. Down south, we go across the creeping section of the San Andreas. We get down to Parkfield, and we kind of break apart, spread out over into the valley. 2 earthquakes, the most significant size, 2.4, striking over in the valley, and 2 ones striking over along the coast. So a line of quakes, it's obvious, right? A diagonal line of quakes going through the creeping section down here, and then it just kind of jumps apart. Once we get down to the south, the LA basin is lit up with new earthquakes, which we have to look up in a second. I have a warning going for 4.9 to strike in the middle of LA in the next 3 days or less. So let's start up to the north. One more time, take a look at the screen. Red line. Coming out of the north. Coming out of the Juan de Fuca fracture zone. Juan de Fuca. Going down to the south, all the way to Southern California. Compare that to this. So what's along here? Why is there a big stack there? The name usually gives it away, depending on which earthquake I click on. Ah, there it is. The Geysers. The Geysers of California. This is the name of the town. It's called Geyserville. And I think you could probably guess what's at the location. Geysers, of course. But humans have drilled in here to get steam. They've made it an additional weak point. That's why we're getting a big stack of quakes here. We're pumping water down into the ground to steam it off, to bring it back up, and take it to these turbines to provide electrical power that gets back into the electrical power thing I was telling you about, with very low frequency being generated from the power lines. So it's like a double whammy. We have the drill points where the wave is going to be attracted to, the very low frequency wave going through the plate, or along the San Andreas. And we have very low frequency being generated from multiple electrical turbines at the location. That's where the big stack of quakes is here. So recapping, big stack of quakes here next to the supervolcano. Another big stack of earthquakes at another volcano, but this one's got drill points and electrical generation. Now, I shouldn't need to show you the creeping section of the San Andreas. It's very well known. I mean, I can show it to you on Google Earth here. It's a diagonal line that goes down to the south, and it gets down to here. The line of quakes gets down to right about here at a place called Parkfield, California. And then we jump over into the valley with the biggest of the bunch, 2.4. The rest, 1's going along the coast. So what's over in the valley? 1.7 and a 2.4. We jump off from Parkfield and go to the east. Off from Parkfield, over to the east. A place called Avenal, California. I'm going to turn on my place marks, and you're going to see a bunch of place marks light up for a bunch of oil wells that are here. More drill points. So these drill points are just like the volcano points. They're a spot for this wave when it's coming down a fault or a plate boundary, and you have drill points next to it, or if you have volcanic points, the drill points and the volcanic points have one thing in common that I can find. They're puncture points in the earth. Whether they're at the surface, going down, or coming up from down below and going up, this wave, when it's going through, seeks out a path of least resistance. And it's like a perforation point. Takes some of that energy out into the valley and over down to the east-southeast, and it impacts into the Garlock Fault down here that is going the opposite way, like a wall. It goes down to the south and impacts with the Garlock. And I can even turn on the Garlock Fault map here, well, just all of California fault map. There it is. It looks like a wall going the opposite direction, and the wave is coming down, gets directed over, goes over to here, which is Ridgecrest, California, correct. So we jump down and across, and we go over to Ridgecrest, and you're getting roughly the same sized earthquakes as what's coming across. Now, there's a 2.4 coming across, so I don't see a 2.4 down here yet, but, I mean, it's pretty much a given. It's going to jump over and go down over into Ridgecrest. Then it will carry on, go back down the other way, this way. Here, let me show you. Go back over to the fault zone map. We jump over, go down, and then we come back down and go over. Some of the energy is taken over to the east by that, and we tend to see an outbreak across South Nevada as we go over to the east this way with the wave. So the wave gets divided at that point. Comes down, goes over, part of it goes to the east, the other part goes back down and comes over into Southern California. And you can follow it. It's literally like a stepping stone path of quakes that comes down, goes over, and back down, like a lightning bolt. So those perforation points in the valley are aiding in the flow going over to the east. Somebody had to already know this a long time ago. Seriously. Because those wells have been there for so long, and somebody had to realize there was a wave coming down the San Andreas. And if they just drilled across that area, it would aid in the flow going over to the east and go into the plate, as opposed to go down to Southern California and break. Now, some of the flow still goes down to Southern California. When there's a big wave, okay, the wave breaks two ways, and it goes back down to Southern California. So, speaking of the going back when there's a big wave, when we get down here and there's a big wave, we tend to go around the area that's drilled. And that's what's going on over here along the coast. Now, I'd like to go look up the 1.0 down here, Los Alamos, California, and just go take a look and see what's there. You got to look it up, guys. When you see earthquakes, you don't know what's there, you pretty much should go look them up. You might be shocked to find stuff there. I don't know. What's this? Okay, a 2.7 in Swarm from May 24th of 2015. Big deal, right? Why did I mark that? There must be something here nearby. Oh, that's right. Take a look. Look at that. Oil wells out here in the middle of a farm field. Frack well and oil well. Multiples. All right. That's why I marked it. Okay. Well, I'm glad I marked it. So we're right next to another oil and gas pumping operation here with our small earthquake. The 1. What about the 1.1? It's the only oddball out, right? So we've jumped over to our pumping operations over in the valley. We've gone down south to a pumping operation. I don't know of any over here along the coast at Templeton, California. The only way to know is to go look. The depth says fault zone. But let's go see. The only way to know is to find out, is to look. The only way to know is to find out. That's a real logical statement. Yeah. The only way to know is to find out, guys. The only way to find out is to look. Gotta add that in. Okay. Templeton. I don't see any drill points. This would be strictly fault zone movement. The only one of the bunch that's not directly next to a drill point. What do we have there? Oh, power generation. I'll be darned. Nice size solar array there. Seriously, there's none. Are there any even in town? None. It's the only one around. I mean, you'd have to tell me it's chance. Over and over and over and over and over again. It's getting ridiculous. Let's go down in the south part. So this one's next to a power generation. This one's next to drill points. What's down here in the south part of the valley, man? Jeez, dude. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep it professional. Holy moly, my fellow researcher. Okay, here we go. What's down here in the south part of the valley? It says Kern Lake. What's that? Now, what are all these pipeline segments laid out here on the ground for? I wonder. Oh, wait. That's right. This is where our oil pumping operations pick up in the south part of the valley and go through the farmers' fields directly. You see them there, but they go out into the desert too, so you don't have to wonder whether or not they're for farming or not. That's not for getting water out of the ground. This is for black gold and natural gas. Now, this pumping operation you can trace through the farm fields, and it goes over here to the west where, you see all this? Well, here, hold on. See all these on the ground here? This is not a jack or a pump storage yard. It just goes on and on and on. Look at that. All right, so that's the San Andres. Here's our pumping operations. They go down through the valley and come back up. And we are directly next to one here. Also looks like we got a set of power lines. But I'm going to lend it towards the million drill points right next to the earthquake. How many is that now? This one, power station. This one, drill point, oil. 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 And the rest are a line of earthquakes that comes down and goes right to it. The only thing we haven't talked about yet is the creeping section itself, which is a 3.0 earthquake, the biggest of the bunch on the creeping section, coming down to the south. I have a warning going for an upper 4 to low 5 to strike in the middle of LA. And it should hit by Sunday night. So here we are. We're halfway through the warn time, and LA started to move. Now, we were off the coast of Malibu. That wasn't that big of a deal. We were next to those offshore rigs. I do want to go down here into Hawthorne, go take a look, see what's in the area around the earthquake epicenter, with all the others being next to drill points. I think this should pretty much be next to a drill point, right? Let's go see. Oh, wow. Hey, hold on. We're below a airport here. A small airport? Is that what this is? A local municipal airport in LA. That's just odd. I've never seen that. Okay. What is here? Holly Park? X marks the spot. Look at that building, right? I wouldn't think the airport's related to it, guys. I'm looking for an oil or gas pumping operation here, really. I mean, if there's some huge power generation facility, then I'll really start to get suspicious. Looks like we got massive parking lots. Oh. God, I just needed to back it out ever so slightly. Okay. See this right here? This is a giant refinery. See the refinery? This is storage and refinery. But this used to be, all of this refinery here, going over to the east past the highway, and going up to the north all the way along the coast. I want to say it even went past the airport. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, going up to 1920 and 1930, the Los Angeles oil wells were some of the most numerous on the planet, that they had hundreds of thousands of wells that were throughout just this area alone. And the remnant of that goes as far north as the Baldwin Hills, here where they still have a lot of the wells still functional up there back in the, I guess, the hills there north of Inglewood. But this all used to be oil well, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can go search, I think you can search Hawthorne, LA, or just Los Angeles oil and gas pumping, and up will come just so many pictures. And then that's why they made the airport and this other area, the refinery, the oil companies retained some of the ownership of that and just turned it straight up into a refinery from where the old wells were. So that's pretty interesting. There may even be functional wells still placed out all around the area here and there. They'll still get something out of those, but I don't see any right off the top of my head. You're just going to have to take my word for it on that there used to be an old pumping operation there. I don't have pictures queued up ready to go to show you. And there will be people who are like, Dutch, I don't know. Okay, well, again, feel free to go check it out if you don't. I don't ask anybody to believe me online, but if I talk about something and don't show it, I would encourage you to go look it up. Okay, the one set of quakes up here off the coast of Malibu, were going next to the fault zone. That was the Santa Barbara fault. Is that what it was called? As we go further down to the east by southeast, we're going to get ready to wrap up this update, but I have a significant swarm to show you down south next to the border, as well as a line of earthquakes going along the San Jacinto. I need to bring up something that I read years ago, that the San Jacinto was, quote-unquote, slow slipping, or in a slow slip. And that's significant, that if they admit that, of course, Southern California would be slow slipping on the San Jacinto at the Borrego Springs, or Borrego, here, and Anza Gap, and that would be eventually leading to an extremely large earthquake. That's according to the University of Southern California paper that came out like 5 or 6 years ago, talking about this slow slipping. Well, there hasn't been a big earthquake. Instead, what keeps happening is a line of earthquakes comes down, the wave comes down to the south, breaks, and then, or if it is a big push, comes down and hits Southern California, breaks, and then goes over to the east. And when it comes down to the south, it travels path of least resistance. Let's go back over to the USGS map here. Wave coming down the San Andreas, divided out over to the east, goes to Ridgecrest. Part of it divided further over to the east and goes to the edge of the Craton. The other part of the wave comes down, goes back into the San Andreas, carries on down to the south. Once it gets to Southern California, we have a three-way split that the wave can take. Normally, if it's coming in from the Garlock and coming across this way, it'll take the path of least resistance, go right down straight past the San Andreas, and carry on and go on down to the south to the Imperial Fault through the San Jacinto. That's exactly what you see here. Now, once we get down to the south, the wave goes back into the fault, or into the plate boundary. So the wave comes back in and goes back into this big, thick red line and carries on down to the south. Where it carries on, or where the wave meets back in, another swarm, going up into the 2 range. What's there? Let's go right down at the border and take a look. Right here. A few things. One, geothermal pumping operation. Pipelines and drill points that go down into the ground to get heat that then produces steam, and it comes back up and turns the turbines. But right next to it, we've got what starts as just 2 huge solar power generation stations. And we go into insane levels where these are all solar panels. instead of farming now, they're changing over their farm fields like this into solar farm fields like this. These are all solar panels. And you can do a street level on it. It's pretty impressive looking, actually, I think. They might have a street level on this now. Well, there they are, way off in the distance. But you can see them. Again, they go on and on forever. And there's got to be just an insane amount of power being generated by this amount of solar power. Now, remember what I told you about the drill points, and remember what I told you about the power stations, and remember what I told you about them being along where a wave is going through, and that wave is electrically VLF induced by Mother Nature. So, of course, it's going to seek out that point, as opposed to go down to the south and naturally carry on down to the stair-step fracture zone to the south. That's what would normally happen, I think, is that the wave would come down, go down here, and we'd see it reflect back into itself, and you get a big break that happens in here as the wave goes down and reflects back into itself. Now, are these spots helping? I don't think so. I think they just show us, like a pressure gauge, they show us the wave as it arrives. So anyway, I got a warning going in Southern California. We're not canceling the warning. Stands should hit. Just running 3 days behind across the board. A new 4 coming in down to the south, down in New Mexico, is a wake-up call for Texas that I'm running 3 days behind. Here we are, 3 days behind. What else did I not mention? Okay, so South America I did not mention in my last update. Neither did I mention Central America, and I regret that because I did get back on live and talk about it after my update. So I did my update, I recorded it, I then got back on and said, hey, I didn't talk about Central and South America. Let me just get on there. Okay, well, here we are. So we've already talked about Central America. We're going to watch for up to a 7.4 to strike, and we have to warn everybody from South Mexico all the way down here, basically down to Panama, basically. Now, South America is going to be doing a little bit of significant activity in its own right over the next several days. I think it's going to be in the mid-range 6 level, though. I think it'll be about the same size as what struck just now in Central America. I already have the warning going for an upper 6 to be striking here, so don't have to change anything. The warning is for the coast of Chile to be on watch for an upper 6. Same for over in the West Pacific. I don't have to change anything. We're halfway through the warned time. That's watching Sumatra, Indonesia for an upper 6 as well. So let's recap all these warned areas, guys. We got a lot going on. Japan, on watch for up to 7. We have to warn everybody from Tokyo to the north. Tokyo to the north to Hokkaido. And technically my warned area up north in the Kuril Islands. But in light of the deep earthquake down below Japan, I think it's pretty much no-brainer. Sumatra, Indonesia, up to upper 6. Next several days, up to an 8.5 to 8.6 up to potential. And that goes from Fiji, north of New Zealand, basically. Fiji, Kermadec Islands, over to the west to New Caledonia, right here. And really, I mean, we have to encompass the area all the way to Solomon Islands, and like I said, north of New Zealand, where this being the center of the area where I'm watching. For a huge earthquake like that only. Normally, I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles. West Coast United States on watch for an upper 4 to strike in LA Basin. A swarm to break out at Yellowstone, and a new 5 to come in up at Seattle on the Seattle Fault. South America, mid to upper 6, due down on the coast of Chile. And then here in the middle of it, of the East Pacific, we have up to a 7.4 now due in the next 7 to 10 days between Mexico and Panama. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. There's also a lot going on elsewhere around the world. Ozzy, you guys are sitting... Hey, check it out, by the way. Look what happened. I get so excited about small earthquakes, right? Like, you know, nerding out. Look. You got a new 4-point-something earthquake that came in on the Red Arrow a few days ago. And then I noticed last night a bunch of earthquakes started to get reported down here. Down around Adelaide. Now you've got 2 more. That's down by Melbourne and over by Sydney, or, well, south of Sydney. And then over to the west, Perth. moving as well. Now, ironically or not, these are areas that were just talked about by Monkeyworks in his update today. Not because of the earthquakes. And he gave me a big shout out today. I want to give a big shout out back to Monkeyworks. We've never talked. I don't even know his real name. Do you know his real name, babe? I don't even know his real name. I need to learn his real name. Dude, I feel bad. Anyway, don't know his real name. But he's a great guy. Online, as far as I know. You know, the guy next, as soon as you say that, right? Like you find out the guy's a cult leader or something, right? Like, okay, I'm kidding. So, anyway, great guy. He gave me a shout out, and he recommends me for earthquakes and some weather information, and I recommend him for all that information plus. He's a great guy, so go check him out if you can. Monkeyworks over on YouTube. But just, this isn't the only spot where this is happening. We get over here to Europe, and he's talking about Malta. He was showing this drone flight, these weird drone flights that were taking place over Malta a few months ago. And then, boom, the earthquakes hit. It's not like you talk about Malta all the time, right? I mean, so pretty interesting stuff. Go check them out if you get a chance. Anyway, those are the warned areas for the earthquakes, and I would encourage you to have a plan and be prepared. This is just a good idea in general, guys, and I'm serious now. Will you please listen at least for this? Will you please take the time to develop an emergency kit? Don't be a liability for somebody else. Change of clothes, set of shoes, flashlight, batteries, and a first aid kit, damn it. Put it together into a freaking pack, will you? Oh yeah, food and water too. You don't want to be eating candy bars, and although that might be a good idea to have that stuff in there. High sugar, high protein, that kind of stuff. We're talking the first few days here. So the first couple days you want to have something that's just high energy. You're not going to be roasting steaks on night one of a major disaster. And if you are, you got a serious attitude check that needs to happen. Anyway, please develop the kit. Now, the other thing you can do is to just in general know what to do when an earthquake strikes. And it is suggested to take shelter underneath an object like a table or desk to protect you from falling objects, obviously. Professionals say that they've never told you to go stand under a door frame. The ultimate gaslighting. We never said it. They're Mandela affecting you on the door thing. They say it comes from a wives' tale. No, seriously, I'm not joking. Professionals now walk that back because of the insurance liability of people standing in doorways getting knocked over by people who are trying to run out of the doors. I'm not laughing at the people running out of the doors. I'm just laughing at the liability thing and how they changed it or trying to say they never said it. Anyway, go look it up now. It says it's based on an 1800s picture of a door standing or something from a newspaper. I'm telling you, Mandela effect on that, because we were told by the professionals to get under doors when, if you didn't have a table to get under. But it turns out if you get under a door, the door can swing. It might not be structural, and you're going to be in the way of people who are freaking out and need to run out of the way or run out. So go underneath a table or a desk. Best advice, right? What else could you do? If you live internationally, or if you are in a cinder block or a brick stacked structure, it just depends on how tall the structure is. But if it's a 1 or a 2 story, you need to have an exit plan. If it's multi-story, you're not going to be able to get out in time. That's just the way it is with a large earthquake, I mean. But we're talking big earthquakes. So like 5, 6, and 7 can start to cause damage to buildings. And once you get, I think normally once you get above 6 and 7.0 in a cinder block stack structure, you could be in some serious trouble. So you need to know where to go outside if you are in those kind of buildings. Do I have anything else to tell you? Well, I'm back online. It's good to be back online right now. I am going to be doing my forecasting going forward. I was going to bail out. Long story on that. I'd like to thank the people who showed up encouraging me to stay around. You guys really, I got down. And let me just wrap up this broadcast. It's a little serious broadcast tonight. I'd like to apologize, and I'm not going to go all mushy and crazy on you or anything. I'd like to apologize to a lot of people for being crude, rude, and not proper. And I'm working on all those things. Proper is a sliding scale, I guess, but I think you know what I mean if you're a longtime viewer. And I've been put through the ringer and back. That's no good excuse. I'm not trying to excuse my bad behavior and my rudeness. I apologize to anybody who I offended. And I feel like I kind of got a message from God, so to speak. Not like a voice in my head or anything. I feel like people encouraged me to keep going. And I promise I will. And I'm not going to get all mushy or preachy on you. It's just I feel like this is important, the earthquake forecasting part. And I can't let it go. So, 3:36 a.m. Central Time. Now, let's save this and put it on YouTube. The people on YouTube deserve to know the truth. Earthquakes can be forecast. They're not random. You can forecast. I can teach you how to do it in a matter of a few minutes, I think. If you watch my updates, you'll glean it through osmosis. Just put your phone up to your head, kid. Oh, wait, you already got your earpods in your ear? Okay, damn Zoomer. I'll be back. Much love.